WISP Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for downloading the WISP Sports Desk here on WISP Sports. This is Season 2, Episode 9. I'm Chris Stafford, joined as usual by my friend over in the UK, Nancy Gillen from Inside the Games. And we're also going to be joined this week by Julie Helmsley to add to what is going to be dominating this week's show, and that is the soccer conversation. If you have been hiding somewhere for the last couple of days, then let me tell you, there has been the most disgusting statement that has come out of the US Soccer Federation towards the US women's soccer team. Discussed. I mean, there are so many adjectives for this, Nancy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. I think I said before, it's embarrassing. It's just, really disrespectful. It's just. I think I said as well. I think when in the future, when hopefully we've got a bit more kind of gender equality in sports, I think it's the landmark case that everyone's going to look back on and kind of pinpoint as the, pinnacle of gender inequality in sport. It's just, it's awful.
But before we actually get into the conversation, I'll bring you in, Julie, in just a moment. I do want to mention that the actual sport, the actual tournament that is almost finished now, and the US play Japan this evening, and that will wrap up the tournament. They will win that unless they lose, they will win with either a draw or a win. They will win and retain the She Believe Cup. But they have had a pretty convincing couple of games here against England. They won 2-0, and then against Spain, they won 1-0. And obviously they go out on the pitch there, and they are so convincing in their someone told me once that their level of fitness is just and the depth of their team. But anyway, their form is amazing, the consistency, and they are still unbeaten since January 2019 now. So before we get into the politics, let's just look at that, ladies. I mean, I know you were watching right late into the night. We were texting each other watching these games, Nancy.
Yeah, obviously as an England fan, the England-America game was incredibly disappointing. I think England were really poor, but at the same time, I think two moments of absolute brilliance kind of won the match for the US from Kristen Press and Carly Lloyd. And I think there's quite a big point being made here. I'm not sure if it's the same in America, that the England team are actually mid-season, so hypothetically should be peak of fitness, while in the US it's still pre-season, so maybe potentially the players aren't quite at the right level yet. So maybe because of that, I don't think the game was the most enjoyable game I've ever watched. But it is just America, like they can, even in a game that's a bit scrappy, they can just pull it out the bag, and two amazing goals, and they had the better chances as well. So it was disappointing, but obviously the Kristen Press goal was amazing. You just had to, no matter what team you supported, you just had to applaud that goal.
I kept rewinding that, just playing. And Spain gave them a little bit to work for, but at the end of the day, their tenacity, determination played through. Entertaining from your point of view, Julie?
Well, I mean, just looking at the fan base that's coming around as well and getting more, and the fact that they have the double games on the day, the early game and the late game. But yeah, amazing. I mean, once again, they show that they can, no matter what level of fitness or level of mindset that they're in, with a new coach, new players coming in, playing slightly differently, they bring out the wins. And that's the strength and skill, if you like, of these players. These players are strong together. They work hard, and they grill out the result. I mean, the other countries, they're still playing they're playing well. They're bringing a force to be reckoned with, and when you've got Kristen Press scoring goals like that again, and Carly Lloyd still hitting the back of the net. I mean, US soccer is strong, it really is.
It certainly is. It's very, very powerful. And the example that they're setting on the pitch, the quality of play, all of those things are really exemplary. And, as I said, they're entertaining to watch, but the quality of play and the standard across the team and the depth of the team and their consistency just speaks for itself. So when we get a statement that the US soccer doesn't want to give the women's team equal pay because the men have, quote unquote, more responsibility, that not only enraged me, but I almost wanted to weep when I saw that, Nancy. As I said to you yesterday, it's so degrading. It's so disrespectful. It's like, well, you've done all this. That's great. But this is what we feel about you. We don't respect you. And you don't, deserve to get equal pay because, you're not up to the men's standard of play and the men's game is, their excuses are just beyond the pale. It's so condescending, so patronizing. It's just so many things. But, as we said before we came on air, it's so much more than that. The messages that their statement sends about not paying these women equally goes way beyond soccer, goes way beyond sport. And it goes back to the Dark Ages.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. It's just, it does, and I said that it says to girls and young women and women everywhere, like, no matter how hard you work or how much you put into something, or even how successful you are, the success that the American women have had in football equates to like the top level in kind of everything else, and it just says that no matter how well you do in life, you're not ever going to get paid as much as a man does. And it does, like you said, just stem down to the kind of the most important issue of the whole kind of fight for gender equality is the fact that women just aren't considered deserving enough to be paid as much as men. Essentially, that's what they're saying.
And to their own employees.
And their own employees that have just been such incredible ambassadors for them across the whole world. And like, as a football fan, female women's football fan in England, the American women's football team has always been, I think, something that everyone here has always kind of looked to aspire to, in terms of, the success and the crowds that they get in, their kind of popularity. Like, up until now, I thought they were really well respected, and that is kind of, always been the mark that female footballers in this country, and kind of the hopes that we had for our own Lionesses, our own England team. We want our team to get to the popularity that they achieve, and then it's just so incredible that US soccer then turn around and say, no, despite all these things you do, and despite the fact you're such amazing ambassadors for us, we don't think you deserve equal pay. It's just, it's unbelievable.
And what's even more shocking is the world respects this team and has done for a while, far more than its own federation. Julie, it's as we say in England, it's gobsmacking, it's flabbergasting, it's just, I am so, can you tell, I'm so enraged by this and the message it's sending far and wide.
I'm just sick to my stomach, to be honest. Having worked in football development, soccer development, and continuing work, it's like saying, well, we want you to do it, but we really don't want you involved. And I think that's wrong, especially when, they've our women's soccer players have worked so hard to get the respect of the fan base, to have the responsibility of getting girls involved in playing. I mean, we don't see any of the guys doing that, getting girls involved with playing, but, boys and girls come and watch the women's games. And I'm so bitterly disappointed in the fact that, one, they put it on the eve of International Women's Day. Two, they put it before a really big game against Spain. And three, they just basically showing us, Nancy, you and I know what some of the guys are like in England. We won't call them what they are, but, it brings me back to, well, am I here doing the same things that was yesteryear?
Are they trying to
in Europe.
sabotage them? Yeah, I mean, are they trying to sabotage them, undermine them? I mean, this is anyway. I mean, even more worrying, really, as I said, the implications are far and wide. Julie, you coach young girls. What message does it send to them?
Well, I'm hoping like they're living under a rock like some other people. They don't see it. And we just have to do what we've always done. We go there because the game's bigger than any of us. And it's even bigger than the Federation, to be honest, because, you know, it's an injustice. It's an injustice. No matter what the mood right now, the She Believes Cup is bringing in income. They're bringing in fans. They're bringing in people that want to play soccer. And is all that going to go away? Is that all going to go away? And it makes you really worried about how they perceive the future and what real support are they giving the women and girls.
Well, I don't think it's going to go away because, as you rightly said, the sport is that much bigger than any one federation. And the public are speaking here. I mean, the implications, I said, are so far-reaching. You've seen how much the US women's soccer team are respected far and wide. So I think the momentum is there for them. I'm just wondering what this is going to do to the Federation's reputation, the relationship between the Federation and the team now going forward, because if they go to court on the 5th of May, which is look like they're absolutely, you know, going in a straight line there, then afterwards, I mean, that's one thing. And it looks like right now, any judge in their right mind is going to be in favor of the team. I mean, how can you not? How can you possibly, you know, stand up to the sexism that there is amongst the Federation? But regardless of that court case, where is it going to leave the relationship there between the Federation and the team? It's so fractured now. And it's been festering. That rot has been festering now for so long. I think that's what's so damaging to US women's soccer.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of, I think I was talking about striking before, saying that maybe will it come to that where the players literally refuse to play for their federation. I can't see that happening because of the professionality of the women's team and their dedication to it. But it is just, you know, it is the kind of how, yeah, where does this leave them really? Unless maybe there's a personnel change and this brings about a personnel change in US soccer, which maybe hopefully it will do. Potentially maybe if they lose the court case, you know, we'll see a few resignations and they can put in more progressive people, hopefully.
Well, yes, there is that side to it. Hopefully over time that will happen. But, you know, that's a very, very slow moving bus, isn't it? Those kind of changes, enough personnel that are in a position of power to change the tide here. It's sad beyond words, and I think there's a lot of people have been writing about this that know a lot more about any of us about soccer, and you know, just hope that they will raise the tide with all of us talking about it, and I hope shaming the Federation in some way, making them realize that what they're doing is just so far-reaching, and that they're not going to win this. You know, you can't have this sexist attitude in 2020.
No, definitely not. And kind of, I suppose, one positive out of it is the outrage that it's caused. And I suppose kind of the exposure that there are still attitudes like this, and, you know, the fact that people were fighting against it and the American women's team are fighting against it. So fingers crossed it does go their way, and at least it would kind of be part of an eradication of these kind of attitudes.
Yeah. Julie, what do you think at grassroots? You know, how is this going to impact, do you think? And, you know, if it goes to the courts and the women win, which goodness knows, I hope they do.
Well, the impact is, you know, a lot of people being dismayed and angry and saying, I mean, although we're all professionals, we've got to do our job, just as the ladies did when they went out and they beat Spain on that eve. We're going to continue with grassroots. US youth soccer is a little bit separate from the Federation because it kind of develops and organises children. And they do have a good grassroots program over here, and the modules are exciting. And the excitement is the fact that the women's and girls are becoming, a lot more involved than the boys and the men. And we'll continue to do that. I mean, obviously, this is the impact could be the fact that, it could impact the women's league. It could, in fact, because players play in the women's league. As Nancy said, if they strike, what's going to happen? We're just suddenly getting this fan base of kids and women and men go and watch the games and enjoying the games, creating a fan spectator base here, which they didn't have, to understand the game, to understand the feeling of playing the beautiful game of soccer. And that's going to be interrupted. And so we're going to go back 20 years. It's hard. It's very disappointing. Chris, it's very disappointing to think that we've slogged, and it has been a slog in all countries, England especially. Now we've got to do it again and again. When's it going to stop? When are we going to actually be?
Yeah, I mean, it's so demoralizing. This is I mean, and it's down to the coach and the coaching team just to keep the girls' morale up. They're heading into another game tonight, as we said, the final game for them of the She Believes Cup against Japan. And to your point about building the fan base, we've got record crowds. We had record crowds in New Jersey on Sunday evening, and record crowds, I think, in Orlando. Don't quote me on that, but maybe I'm confused. I know there were record crowds in New Jersey, and they're looking at the same tonight in Texas. So, right there, I mean, you I don't know if you watched the game on against Spain on the weekend, Julie, but the atmosphere, a full stadium, it was fabulous to watch. It was a bit like the game versus France in the World Cup. It was a tremendous atmosphere.
Yeah.
It really, really was. So you have to say, what else do they have to do? What else do they have to do? I think the idea of, as you said, Nancy, of them striking, which the US women's ice hockey team did a couple of years ago, perhaps, about equal pay, and that really caught their federation's attention, and they won their case. That was right before the Olympic Games. That could have a really strong impact here. I have to wonder if they're not thinking about that. And now with the coronavirus, when Tokyo, in a few weeks' time, by the time they come out of court in early May, there will be a decision having been made about Tokyo going ahead. So, it might be double blind for them to, and a moot point for them to strike. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they did strike, it would always prove the point that, well, apparently US soccer say the men have more responsibility, whatever that means. But if the women did strike, it kind of proves the point that, the impact it would have would prove that they are completely vital. So I think they probably maybe are considering it as a last resort. But I suppose, like you said, yeah, it kind of does depend on what's happening with the Olympics, and if there is a time for them to strike, or if the Olympics is going ahead, will they? I very much doubt they'd want to miss out on the Olympics. So it's all quite up in the air, I suppose. But I would be quite surprised if they weren't considering it. I think it's definitely an option, but probably a very last resort option.
All right. Well, stay tuned to our social media at WISP Sports. We'll be following this story as ever, and we'll no doubt be talking about it next week and rounding up the She Believes Cup here. Now, I want to switch to cricket real quick, because whilst all this was playing in the Northern Hemisphere, the ICC T20 World Cup was being played out in Australia, and they had some weather against them. But at the end of the day, and not to be partisan here, at the end of the day, Australia convincingly beat India in the final to win that ICC T20 World Cup. However, Nancy, and that was some really serious knocking it about the park going on there. 4s and 6s were flying. And at the end of the day, though, this will be remembered for the way England had to make their exit, I think, because there was not a spare day allocated for weather. Just explain that to everybody, because I know you were watching it.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was very frustrating to kind of watch the final as an England fan, because Australia beat India so easily that it kind of, it's kind of what could have been maybe if England had reached the final. But the reason they weren't there is, because they were playing India in the semi-final, but there wasn't a reserve day and it rained all day. And then I think it had been because India had the better record earlier on in the tournament that they were given the place in the final, which is just kind of a really awful way to go out of a tournament. But it's unbelievable that they didn't have at least one day scheduled in just so that they could, just in case, they could play a game. And I think also it is meant to be quite rainy I think the game was played in Sydney. It is meant to be rainy in Sydney at this time of year, so it wasn't completely unexpected that it did rain. I think a few people have kind of countered it with saying it's not necessarily an affront on women's sports because it was the same with the men's game, with the men's T20 World Cup, which is taking place later this year. But I bet you now, after that's happened, that they will schedule in a reserve day for the men's competition. And it's kind of that same old story of a women's tournament almost being used as a testing ground, or when something goes wrong, it's then fixed in the men's competition. Quite similar to how in the Women's World Cup last summer, VAR was used properly for the first time, and there were all sorts of dodgy decisions going on because it was the first time that VAR had been used. And then, it was amended for the men's game later on. So it's just, really, really frustrating, I think, and just a massive, massive oversight. I think ICC said the reason that it was a day hadn't been scheduled in is because of the kind of fast nature of T20, but it is just one day. You just push the tournament back one day, and that's it. It's not too hard to do.
It's not like they don't have a long lead time when they're preparing for these tournaments to schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, rugby is making all kinds of efforts towards equality, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been quite impressed with rugby recently. I wrote a blog for International Women's Day, and I kind of gave them a shout out because I think they've extended a scheme they do for scholarships for women in leadership positions in rugby, and that's kind of global as well, which I like because it's not just focusing on like women in like America or England. It's looking at Africa and Asia and so on as well. And then the African Rugby Cup, which is a tournament that takes place, I think it's every year. They are holding their tournament alongside the men's tournament now. So this year it's going to take place, if they can, they're going to have them as double headers in the same venue, which I think is just kind of a really good move, because I imagine apart from South Africa, rugby is quite a developing sport in a lot of African countries. So it's kind of at that stage where you can probably fix gender equality issues quite quickly because there's no kind of like preconceptions about who plays the sport or so on. So it's a really kind of good move. And I think World Rugby, the federation, have kind of congratulated Rugby Africa as well for putting that in place. And then they've also put a women's rugby manager in place, and they're really like kind of leading the way, which is just really good to see.
Yeah, it is. At least one of the federations is getting it right. And speaking of rugby sevens, in this case, we should also mention the Six Nations tournament's been impacted by coronavirus. We've talked about that before. But on the rugby sevens, our WISP ambassador here for US Women's Rugby is Naya Tapper. And I talked to her to get an update from the women's sevens tournaments, because she went down to South Africa. Where else did she go? Australia. She had a great time with traveling around for the rugby sevens. And then she took a bit of a vacation, but she's back in training. And I caught up with her to find out what else is happening in women's rugby sevens. Hi, Naya. How are things going?
Everything's great. Thanks for reaching back out. We're just getting back into the training season. We have a long month and a half before we have our next tournament, so we're just getting ready for that.
And I had mentioned that you had a bit of a tour going on there, South Africa, Australia. I mean, you really clocked up some miles there, and it was a mixed experience for you, wasn't it? How would you summarize it now that you've had a little while to look back at what you did out there?
Yeah. Just from the start of the season to where we are at right now, almost near the end, getting close to the Olympics. The beginning of the season, obviously, we came in first place at Glendale. I'm really happy about that. We had came in first place the last tournament of the last season. So to go first place back-to-back was a great accomplishment for us. Then we headed to Dubai. We came in third there, so we dropped down a little bit, but we were still happy with just making the podium. And then Cape Town, it went a little bit left. We went down again to fifth place. I think just it being the first time we had a back-to-back tournament, it was something that we had to adjust to. So that was kind of just a learning curve for us, that tournament. We took first place. Obviously, you want to make podium, but we took what we could from that tournament and hope to bring it into the next back-to-back tournament we would have, which was New Zealand and Sydney. Hamilton, just in general, was really good for us because it was the first time that we would be doing that tournament. That was the first time all the women's teams were invited to that tournament. So that was a special tournament for us. We came in fifth place there as well. Obviously, like I said, we would have loved to make the podium, but that wasn't the case. Right after New Zealand, we headed to we headed to Sydney, Australia. I didn't play in that tournament, but just watching from outside in, there were some principles that we had been practicing during training that we were missing a little bit on the field, and that kind of hindered us, and we ended up taking 8th place for that tournament. Also, that was another back-to-back tournament, so just thinking of, even though we did have a back-to-back tournament before that tournament, could it still be having an effect on us, and if so, how can we change that to not hinder us in our performance? Also, it was really, 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 really hot. It hit like 110 degrees Fahrenheit on one of those days, so you can just imagine the fatigue in addition to the heat. So that's where we're at now. We had a tournament for Hong Kong, which would have been another tournament that would have been a first for all the women's teams, but unfortunately that got delayed to October. So now we're just getting ready for Canada and Paris and then the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, that's summarizing it. You know, watching you from here, it seemed like you got off to a great start with that tour, and then it just was a downhill, slippery slope. You're very philosophical about that, and what your takeaways are from it. Notwithstanding, as you said, the extraordinary conditions there, the heat that you had to deal with. But overall, I know I talked to you soon after while you were on vacation, you know, and you were very positive, very upbeat about it, because you have to look at what you take away from it, what lessons are learned from it. Yeah. And you've had such a good season, like prior to that, you've been really consistent as a team. Do you think because these tournaments, you know, are pretty full on, aren't they, one game after the other, it's the fatigue factor as much as anything?
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. A longer season, that means more training, more work on the body that maybe your body wasn't used to that load. So just trying to get it to acclimate to everything that we're putting it under right now. Like this being the first year that we're having 8+ tournaments, like it's different. So just trying to find a way physically and mentally to get ourselves through those tournaments, not only get ourselves through those tournaments, but flourish during those tournaments.
Yeah. So you had a nice little break, like a bit of vacation there. Back in training, how is the team feeling now as you prepare to move forwards with what you've built on so far?
So I think right now we're just kind of focusing on the small details, trying to work on our fitness, which was one thing we didn't really get to focus on as much in the beginning of our season because our season started so early compared to last season where we had a good preseason. So we were able to do the conditioning and things that we needed to make sure that we can perform under fatigue. I think we missed a little bit of that this year with the early start. So with this long break, we've been having conditioning sessions every week, and just hard sessions every day in general, a lot of running, a lot of having to make decisions under fatigue, under pressure, which I think is really important and would help us as a team in general, because you've seen us do really well. You know what we're capable of, but when fatigue sets in, if you watch, you notice that hinders us a little bit with the decisions that we make on the field and the effort that we give on the field.
When the legs get heavy, there's not much you can do about it, right? It's not like a soccer game and you bring on in your substitutes and, you're playing for a lot longer. Yeah.
And then I think we're just also focusing on our culture as a team. When you start winning, everything's great, but then when you start losing, things start to break, things start to fracture. So now we're looking at, okay, when it's good, it's good, but when it's bad, how do we make sure that we as a team, we as a family are still good? We as a staff are still good, so that you keep your soul happy, and then that helps everything else. Just trying to work with our sports psychologists on how to not break under pressure and how to not fracture under pressure and how to have each other's backs and trust each other and to buy into the system, even though it may not seem like it's working right now. Because when it's working, we buy in, but when it's not, it's like, okay, well, why isn't it working anymore? Or what's going on? But in reality, you just need to trust the process, which is something we've been working with our sports psychologists on. I think just revisiting on the field some of the basic principles and skills that we have and require of ourselves, and just making sure that we get those down, because just really focusing on the small details so that the bigger picture looks a little more clear.
Yes, absolutely. It's all important, isn't it? Keep that team spirit up, keep the morale up, and believe. Yeah. Just keep believing. Yeah, you can come back to this. So looking ahead then, what's on the schedule for you?
So we have a month and a half of just training. So we've been doing that. This week we have Jamaica and Mexico and California right now, and we've been running some training sessions and playing mini scrimmages with them. So that's been fun to just play, since we won't be able to play for a little while. We have a couple breaks coming up just to let our body rest, to let our mind reset, and then in April, we have the Canada Sevens tournament, and then Paris after that, and then the Olympics after that.
Yeah, all being well, okay, that you can travel and continue that preparation.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
Obviously, full steam ahead, and I know you're working as hard as ever, Naya. Watching you have a tremendous work ethic, and you will prevail. So the best of luck with this, with the training, and on to the next stage and the next games. And we'll catch up with you a little bit down the road, and certainly before the Olympics.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Coming back to the Six Nations tournament, Nancy, how is that wrapping up then? What's the conclusion?
Not too sure, because, like you said, it's been massively affected by coronavirus. Scotland's game with France had to be called off because one of the Scottish players actually tested positive for coronavirus. So now the majority of the Scottish team are self-isolating, so they're not going to be available for the next 2 weeks. And the situation in Europe at the moment is worsening, not getting better. So matches are being postponed, and there's no real kind of inclination as to when they're going to next take place. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see. Again, like most of sport at the moment, just wait and see what happens with coronavirus before the matches are played again.
Yeah. How is that impacting you as a coach, Julie, the coronavirus, and, gathering these girls and women together?
Well, we've been sending out notices, not to scaremonger anybody or anything, but notice on washing hands, don't send your children if they're sick, stay at home. We've seen a demise in attendances because people are just being safe. It's just asking the right questions and giving the right information. US Youth Soccer put out a good information sheet, and US club soccer has, and even our local counties are now looking at, bathrooms, public bathrooms and all that kind of business, because you just don't know who's walking in and out of a public park, and so take wipes with you, make sure that you wash your hands, say happy birthday twice to yourself, and do things.
I think
really
you got to
with
sing happy birthday, the whole verse twice.
Yeah, you have to sing it twice. That's right. So we're just being careful. We have spring break coming up, so that's going to be a natural break for them as well. But right now we're business as usual until we hear different.
Before we move on from soccer, finally park it for this week's show, I do want to hear you two talk about Nancy's quote yesterday. I think it was, Nancy. You said, "Who on earth are Arsenal going to put out against Spurs this weekend? They've got an injury list longer than the FA's patience with Phil Neville at the moment." I love that quote.
Yeah. We're just waiting on him to be fired, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
And what about Arsenal going head-to-head with Spurs then? Who's going to win that?
Oh, I think Tottenham are, to be honest. So that's happening this weekend, Sunday, I think, in the FA Cup. And the problem is we've already got a ridiculous amount of players injured. So we've got kind of people like Kim Little, who's like one of our main midfielders. And then this international break has just not been kind to us. So I think Miedema got injured playing for the Netherlands, and Danielle van der Donk did as well. And then the tweet I was tweeting about yesterday said that Jordan Nobbs and Leah Williamson are being monitored while at the She Believes Cup. So it sounds like they're a little bit injured. And even if they come back fit, it's just going to be, the match is going to be about 2 days after them arriving back in the country. So they're probably going to be really tired and jet lagged. It's probably one of the downsides of having a team that's got a lot of international players in, because Spurs don't really have a lot. So they're going to be able to put out a full strength team, and then Arsenal I think it's just going to be like a development team, which isn't bad, but you want to win the FA Cup. So yeah, I'm going to say Tottenham might win that one, to be honest.
Who's your money on, Julie?
Well, I am a Tottenham supporter, so but I never write Arsenal off, because they rise to the big occasion, and they always have. And it shows that once those players get out there, pride comes in, passion comes in, and who knows? Tottenham haven't been there before, so nerves for them. Arsenal get a quick goal or two, could be a different story, but I got to go with Tottenham too, because I'm a supporter. Sorry, Nancy.
That's all right.
Well,
fine.
We'll hear more about that next week then. So good luck to both teams. And we'll review that and, of course, the She Believes Cup next week here on the show. Nancy, what else should we be talking about this week? I know, and we knew coming into this episode that we would be talking mostly about soccer. So we didn't have much room or time for much else. But is there anything else you would like to touch on before we go this week?
Probably just quickly staying on coronavirus, unfortunately, it's been quite interesting in the winter sports season that a lot of the World Cups have now ended early, because a lot of the finals have been cancelled. I think the Alpine ski finals have now been cancelled, and it's quite similar for ski jumping and snowboard, I think. So yeah, there's been a few athletes getting kind of the titles now when they've only kind of competed in 3 or 4 events. So it's a bit strange, but yeah, it's probably worth keeping an eye out on that, because I think the season's ending a lot earlier than people first thought.
Yes, I think that's true. And I noticed that Michaela Schifrin, who lost her father, of course, earlier in the season, she's now come back. She got on a flight. She's headed to Sweden, to Åre, for one more race there, just to see how the turns are going, and to put in a few good turns at the end. I think not competitive in any way, just to get back on the slopes after what she's been through emotionally. Obviously, it's been a bad winter for her, and to say the least, very, very sad. So I know that will be very popular for amongst the skiing world to see her back on the slopes. So that's all taking place in Sweden this weekend. And as you said, the finals, the World Cup Alpine Skiing finals that were due to take place in Cortina d'Ampezzo, they've been cancelled. As anybody who follows the news knows, that the whole of Italy is closed down. I think I mentioned to you, we've got the World Cup Dressage and Show Jumping finals coming up in Las Vegas at the end of the April, Nancy, and which I was going to go and cover, but now with this coronavirus, I know planes are half empty, or some of them almost completely empty these days. So flying is not the place to be, but that's definitely something that I've hit the pause button on. So we'll be following everything else from afar. I think it's telecommuting, it's live streaming, it's any other which way we can get our sports news. Any final thoughts, Julie? How do you think this game is going to go today, this evening against Japan? Are there going to be a few goals?
2-1 USA. I think the goals are going to, 2-1 USA. Yeah.
Okay.
Take the cup.
Okay.
Take the cup.
And take the cup. And Spain and England, Nancy, what's that going to look like? Because as we know, Spain did give US something to work for the other evening.
Yeah, I don't want to be. I'm being really negative with the teams I'm supporting at the moment. I hate to say it again, but I think Spain are going to win. I was really impressed by them against America, and we're just not looking good at all. So I'm going to say, I think 2-1, another 2-1, but I think Spain 2-1.
Another 2-1. Okay, yeah. You had 2-1 the other day. Came out as 2-0. That's fine. We don't mind that. So I think potentially I'm going to go with 2 or 3-0 tonight.
Okay, yeah.
For the Japan game, potentially 2 or 3-0. So we'll see. We'll circle back this time next week and discuss it, no doubt. And in the meanwhile, don't forget to follow us on social media at WISP Sports, at Nancy_Gillen. And Julie, I can never remember your Twitter handle. Tell us how to find you.
Soccer1, Juliet Soccer1 at Twitter. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for our soccer discussion. And as always, you can keep up with us on social media at WISP Sports and on our website at wispsports.com. Until the next time, thank you for listening and helping us turn up the volume on women's sports.